She was hungry and desperate. He had money, but no hope, then begged for scraps. The other had given up on miracles. But what happened next shocked the world. For more powerful stories like this, subscribe to Simply Stories. She stood quietly. Near the edge of the alley, her small frame swallowed by an oversized hoodie streaked with dust. The smell of garlic butter and grilled lamb wafted from the kitchen vents of the high-end restaurant just steps away, taunting her empty stomach. Her eyes fixated on the kitchen staff tossing nearly untouched plates into large plastic bins half a tone. Steaks, untouched side dishes, bread rolls still warm. Her lips parted slightly, as if debating whether to say something. But she didn't. She knew how these people looked at her. A waiter stepped out with a tray and caught her staring. His eyes narrowed. "This isn't a shelter. Keep moving," he muttered, as if her presence was an insult to the pavement. She gave a small nod and turned, not saying a word. The rejection didn't sting. She was used to it, but it still carved something hollow inside her each time. As she walked past the patio fence, her steps slowed. A sleek black car rolled to a stop, its doors opening silently. Two uniformed nurses emerged, careful and synchronized, as they helped a man out of the back seat. He was older, pale, wearing a tailored charcoal coat draped neatly over his immobile legs. His face was expressionless, but not empty. There was a weight behind his silence. He didn't look around, didn't greet the doorman, didn't even blink at the world. It just stared ahead as they positioned his wheelchair near a sunlit table. She watched. Something about him froze her in place. Not just the car or the luxury. It was the absence of life in his posture, like someone who had once lived more than most, and now had chosen to feel nothing at all. The nurses stepped away after adjusting his scarf. One placed a small silver tablet on his lap. The man tapped it once with stiff fingers, pulling up a stock chart, then set it aside. A waiter approached and poured a glass of sparkling water into a crystal tumbler. Another man in a business suit took the seat across from him, pulling out files. "The merger is already 73% complete. All we need is your sign-off," he said. The paralyzed man didn't answer right away, stared at his glass, then slowly lifted it toward his lips, hand trembling slightly. He paused mid-air as a quiet voice broke the rhythm. "If you're done," the girl said softly, "I'd like the leftovers. In return, I'll trade you a miracle." The businessman's eyes darted toward her. One nurse raised her brows, half annoyed, half concerned, but the girl didn't look at them. Her eyes were fixed on the man in the wheelchair. He looked at her. Slowly, as if unsure whether she was real or part of the city noise, a beat passed. Then he chuckled dry and short. "A miracle," he said, "from you." He tilted his head, examining her more closely. Torn shoes, frayed sleeves, face calm but unreadable. "You want food?" he said, "and you're offering a miracle?" She nodded once. "Yes, but not the kind you can bottle or sell." The businessman across from him leaned forward. "Do you know who you're talking to, little girl?" he asked sharply. She didn't blink. "I'm talking to someone who looks like he hasn't believed in anything in a long time." The billionaire blinked once. Something in her tone, gentle but not apologetic, had caught him off guard. He waved a hand to the businessman, who sighed and shut his folder. "What miracle could you possibly offer me?" the man asked, lifting the glass to his lips again. She stepped closer, not intruding, just close enough to be heard clearly. "That depends," she said. "Do you believe miracles need money?" The table went silent. The waiter froze mid-pour. One of the nurses shifted on her feet. The man set his glass down slowly, the hint of a smile flickering at the corners of his mouth. "You're either delusional or the most entertaining thing I've seen all week," he said. She didn't answer. He stared at her for a moment longer, then nodded toward the empty chair beside him. "Sit," he said finally. "All right, prove it. I've got nothing better to do." The girl sat, quietly, no movement wasted, or no expression of triumph, just presence. He signaled the waiter. "Get her a plate," he muttered. Then, glancing at her again, added, "Not the scraps." The waiter hesitated. "She's my guest," he said firmly. And with that, The girl folded her hands gently in her lap. And the billionaire, still certain no miracle was coming, watched her. Unaware that nothing in his world would remain untouched, she sat across from him at the same café table, her fingers wrapped gently around the warm ceramic cup the waiter had set in front of her. She hadn't asked for anything fancy, just tea, and plain at that. He watched her with the kind of detached curiosity one might give a street performer, mildly intrigued. But unconvinced they'd actually witness anything memorable. The breeze picked up slightly, lifting a loose curl of her hair across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. Instead, she looked at him, not through him. Like most people did, but directly, quietly, deliberately. "I once saved a man's life," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Did you now?" "Not with CPR, not medicine," she continued. "Just gave him a reason to get up again." He smirked faintly. "Words don't move muscles." "No," she agreed, "but belief does." He said nothing, but his jaw tensed. She leaned forward slightly, setting her cup down on the saucer with a small clink. "Every day," she said, "I want you to give me one thing you think you can't do. It's not big things, small, the things you've convinced yourself are impossible." Blinked once. "And what would that achieve?" "You don't have to walk," she said. "Just watch." His laugh was short, but not as sharp as yesterday's. More curious now, more careful. "All right," he said, waving a hand. "Let's play." She stood and left a few minutes later, refusing a ride, a tip, even a takeaway bag. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "Don't eat all the doubt without me." He said nothing, only watched as she melted into the crowd. The next day, she returned with something wrapped in a plastic bag. It clinked gently as she set it on the table. "A gift," she said, "or a memory." He raised an eyebrow as she pulled out an old battered transistor radio. One of the dials was missing, the speaker mesh dented. She flipped it on, and at first, there was only static. But then, with a twist of a screwdriver she'd tucked in her coat pocket, the static cleared. Music spilled out, tinny, warped, but unmistakable. It was jazz, live jazz, recorded decades ago. His eyes narrowed. "That's Miles," he said, barely above a whisper. "It was your favorite once," she said. "How do you know that?" She smiled but didn't answer. He didn't press her. The next day she returned again, this time with something larger. A small van waited across the street. From the back, she emerged with a leash in one hand. Attached to it was a Labrador retriever with graying fur and cautious eyes. The dog hesitated at the curb until it saw him. Then its tail wagged, slowly. At first, then frantically. The billionaire's expression didn't change, but his hand twitched once on the armrest. The dog barked, whimpered, and gently leaned into his chair, pressing its snout into the man's lap. The billionaire stared. "I thought he was gone," he muttered. "He was in a shelter," she said softly. "They still had your name on the Chip said you hadn't come to collect him in years." "Oh." He didn't look at her. He kept petting the dog, his fingers shaky and uncertain, but moving. The nurses watched from a distance, their silence more stunned than skeptical. On the third day, she brought no object, no animal, no tool, just a tablet. She placed it in front of him and pressed play. The video showed a man, balding, rough-voiced, sitting in a small apartment. "I don't know if you'll even see this," the man said. "But if you do, I need you to know I never blamed you. I thought you were dead. We all did, and I kept working. But it was never the same. The best. Part of that job was you." The billionaire's mouth opened slightly. His eyes glistened. "How did you find him?" He whispered. "Sometimes people just need to be asked," she said. That night, he didn't sleep with the TV blaring for background noise. He didn't scroll through mindless stocks or news articles. He sat in his bed watching the old video. Again. Twice. Then he pulled out a dusty notebook from the drawer beside his bed, cracked it open, and wrote a name he hadn't written in nearly a decade. The nurses noticed the difference the next morning. His voice was stronger. His appetite had returned. He asked for fewer pills and questioned their necessity. When one of them checked his legs, They noticed involuntary movement in his toes. It was subtle, barely visible, but it hadn't happened. In years, they reported it. The medical team scheduled tests, scans, blood work. None of it made sense on paper. The man still brushed it all off, of course. Called it coincidence. Random sparks in a broken circuit. Not even as he mocked it, he found himself watching the door just before noon, waiting for her to arrive, and every day she did. She never asked for money, never explained herself, never even accepted his offer. To have a driver pick her up. And yet she showed up every single time with something that made the walls he'd built just a little thinner. That night, as he lay back in bed, the city, lights pulsing gently through the window, he closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't dream of falling. He dreamt of running. She kept showing up, day after day. Her coat still torn, the soles of her shoes barely holding together, but her eyes steady and fierce as ever. The billionaire noticed everything, even when he pretended not to, how her knuckles were raw from the cold, how her voice never trembled even when her body did. There was no pity in her, no sadness, only purpose. That morning she didn't bring any objects or memories. She just stood in front of him, hands in her pockets, and said, "Move your finger." He gave a dry laugh. "You're 2 weeks late for that kind of miracle. Just try," she said. He stared at her, annoyed, but only for a second. Something in her tone didn't leave space for sarcasm, so he looked down at his right hand. It hadn't moved in 9 years, not once. But now, with a deep breath and a flicker of doubt, he tried. It was the faintest twitch, barely a shift, slight contraction of one knuckle. He blinked, then tried again. This time, it moved a fraction of an inch. The nurse gasped. The girl didn't react like the others. No excitement, no applause. She simply gave him a small nod. "There it is," she whispered, like she had already seen it before he believed it. The staff scrambled, called for the in-house physician, ran him through a full exam. His neurologist flew in from another state. The scans showed nothing conclusive, just neural activity where there hadn't been any for years. The doctor scratched his head and called it a spontaneous neurological anomaly, a fluke, a glitch in the system. But it wasn't a glitch. It was something else, something no MRI could detect. She came again the next day, and the next. The tasks became more personal. Pick up a coin, hold a pen, grip her hand. He failed at first. We're no longer hollow. His body was listening now, like a sleeping animal starting to stir. They were seen once at the park, him being pushed slowly in his wheelchair while she walked beside him, feeding pigeons. Someone snapped a photo. It ended up on a gossip site, with the headline *Billionaire and Mystery Girl. Real life healing. The next day, another photo. This time outside a bookstore. She was pointing to something in the window while he listened intently. Then another. At a community garden, where she bent down to show him something in the dirt, his eyes focused. More alive than anyone had seen in years, the internet was flooded with theories. Some claimed she was his secret daughter. Others thought she was a hired therapist with experimental methods. A few called it a stun-tan elaborate media manipulation to distract from a new merger. But no one could find her. No social media, no family, no name. Every reporter that tried to follow her lost her in a crowd. Every search came up empty. Didn't exist, not in any database. One night, as they sat in his study, the fire crackling softly in the hearth, he looked at her and asked the question that had been building in his chest for days. "Who are you?" She looked up from the book she was skimming. "Are you some kind of angel?" She tilted her head, amused. "No." He waited. "I'm what your money could never buy." She didn't say anything else. That night after she left, he sat alone. In the dark, his hands resting on his lap. He looked down at them. One moved now. It didn't move well, but it moved. He picked up the phone, called his lead caretaker and said 4 words, canceled the therapy sessions. There was a pause on the line. "All of them, sir." "Yes," he replied. "I've found something better." The next morning, long before the staff had even begun their rounds, he wheeled himself into the front parlor alone. The hallway lights flickered on by motion sensors as he passed. a trail of soft glows behind him. He reached the threshold of the wide marble atrium, his favorite room. The one with the tall windows and old mirrors that once reflected everything he'd built, before he'd stopped coming into it altogether. He sat for a moment, silent, thinking. Then, slowly, he gripped the arms of his wheelchair. His knuckles whitened. His body trembled. His breath came shallow. Then, inch by inch, he lifted himself. The surveillance camera mounted near the ceiling recorded it all. One leg jerked forward, barely able to hold weight. The other followed, stiff and dragging. He swayed once, grabbed the back of the chair for balance. He didn't fall. He stood. Shaky, uneven, but standing. And though no one was in the room, he smiled not from pride, not from victory, but because for the first time in 9 years, the impossible had become personal. The cameras flashed like lightning. Across the stage, a sea of reporters sat packed into rows beneath the high ceiling of the conference hall. Microphones extended like hungry mouths waiting for a word that would break the internet. The world had seen the footage, grainy, time-stamped surveillance that caught what doctors called impossible. A man who had been paralyzed for 9 years, standing on his own feet and walking, no cane, no chair, just trembling legs, sheer focus, and something else in his eyes, something none of them could explain. He stepped up to the podium without assistance. There was a hush, not because he asked for it, but because the moment demanded it. His suit was tailored, his steps slow but deliberate. The kind of movement that once meant power, now redefined by purpose. They waited for a name, a story, medical, breakthrough. But when he spoke, it wasn't about science. It wasn't about stem cells or surgeries or experimental procedures. He didn't mention clinics or doctors or devices. He said everyone wants to know how. What pill? What process? What secret treatment? But the truth is far more inconvenient. What changed me wasn't medicine. It wasn't data. It wasn't money. It was a stranger. His voice trembled not from weakness, but from the weight of what he was trying to say. She had nothing. No address, no titles, no fame. Not as a patient. It's not as a patient, not as a billionaire. Just a man who forgot how to try. He paused. Let the silence hang for a moment before continuing. She didn't heal me. She dared me to believe, to move, to see again. And slowly I did. Because when someone believes in you without asking for anything in return, it changes the rules. A journalist shouted, "What's her name?" He looked out into the flashing lights. "That's the part that terrifies me," he said quietly. I never knew it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He raised his hand to quiet them. She didn't want credit, didn't want money. She wanted me to wake up, so I did. And now it's my turn to do the same for others. From the inside pocket of his coat, he pulled out a folded document and laid it on the podium. "Half my fortune," he said. "All of it liquidated, redirected, to build anonymous wellness centers, not hospitals, not charities. Places where the overlooked can be seen and the broken can be believed in." He looked down for a moment, then back at the crowd. "They will be called the Miracle Exchange, because sometimes a miracle isn't a cure, it's a conversation, a gesture, a chance to start again." The room erupted in questions. Cameras clicked. Reporters scrambled to file the story before their competitors. But none of them had the answer they wanted most. Who was she? In the days that followed, they searched. Cameras scanned the streets she had once walked. Dozens of outreach workers were questioned. Surveillance footage reviewed. Old cafe employees interviewed. Some remembered her quiet, polite, always alone. One said she used to wait near the kitchen door for tossed-out scraps. But after the billionaire stood for the first time, she never came back. The city grew obsessed. Blogs speculated. Internet. Sleuths tried to match her image to missing persons databases. But she remained untraceable, as if she'd vanished with the very miracle she'd gifted him. And still, he waited. Weeks later, the billionaire returned to the cafe. Not with an entourage, not with cameras, but alone. He sat at the same table where it all began, the one near the railing with the best view of the street. The air was cooler now. The city had started to move past the sensation, but he hadn't. His eyes lingered on the alleyway she used to appear from. The seat across from him remained empty. He sat in silence until a soft tug at his coat startled him. He looked down too. See a small child barefoot, hair matted. No more than 7 or 8 years old. She told me you'd come, the boy said, holding out a folded scrap of paper. He reached for it carefully, as if it might vanish in his hands. The page was torn. From an old book, the edges were worn, the ink smudged from fingers or tears. He opened it slowly, breath caught in his throat. It read in shaky handwriting. Asterisk, the miracle wasn't me. It was you, believing. Asterisk. He closed his eyes. No tears, no words, just silence. And when he opened them again, something had shifted in his gaze. Not the awe he once wore when his legs began to move. Not the pride of standing alone. It was peace. He stood without help, tucked the note into his breast pocket, and left the cafe. No driver waited for him, no security, just a man, once broken, now walking on his own through a city that had no idea what had truly happened. He passed people lost in their phones, others rushing through traffic. No one noticed the quiet strength in his step, but he didn't mind. He wasn't looking to be seen anymore. He was looking to see, and with every step, the miracle walked beside him unseen, unwound, and unforgettable.